The Church of St Barnabas is set on a hill. The broad copper roof with its slender finger pointing to the heavens may be seen from many parts of the parish. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said to his disciples, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid." In 1952, the only church on this site was a small corrugated iron hut where services were regularly conducted by the first vicar of St Barnabas, the Reverend John Sertin. On the 6th of May 1953, the clergy and people assembled to celebrate the laying of the foundation stone for the new church by Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Gloucester. The Lord Bishop of Rochester, the Right Reverend Christopher Chavas, welcomed Her Royal Highness on her arrival and gave the blessing after the foundation stone had been laid. Work then commenced on the dual-purpose building, which was to serve as church and church hall for the rapidly increasing congregation. Youth work in the church flourished, and summer camps were held regularly. On one memorable occasion, there was a visit to the new airport at Gatwick. By 1961, plans were completed for a new permanent church to be built on the remaining piece of land. On the 7th of June, 1962, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Gloucester returned to St Barnabas to lay the foundation stone of the new church. She was received by the Lord Lieutenant of the county, the Mayor, Mayoress, and the Member of Parliament. After inspecting the Guard of Honour, formed by the Royal Air Force cadets, the Scouts and Guides, the Duchess was escorted to the dais by the Vicar, the Reverend John Tambone. The band of the Bromley Salvation Army Citadel provided the music for the occasion. Her Royal Highness ensured that the foundation stone was well and truly laid. The Lord Bishop of Rochester, the Right Reverend David Say, gave the blessing. The winter that followed was very severe, and for many weeks, work on the site proceeded rather slowly. With the better weather, work began in earnest, and during 1963 and most of 1964, the building made slow but steady progress. Strange, disconnected shapes were constructed. Steel rods appeared to grow out of concrete. Quaint corners were fashioned, and each section seemed to be completely independent of each other. In a factory in the East End of London, the girders, which were to support the great copper roof, were being manufactured. The roof frames were lifted into place by crane and securely fixed with bolts. Eventually, the spar was fixed on the top, the crane was disconnected, and work could then begin on covering the roof with copper sheeting. The cage, which had surrounded the church, was dismantled, and the building drew near to completion. On the 10th of September 1964, the newly completed church was filled with people assembled for the consecration service. Clergy came from many of the surrounding parishes to share this great occasion. The Archdeacon's procession entered the church and the doors were closed. Out of the dark night, the bishop's procession approached the main door. The bishop knocked 3 times with his staff, and after responding to the vicar's challenge, was allowed to enter. The procession then entered the church, and the service of consecration was celebrated. 10 years later, on the 16th of June 1974, the people of St Barnabas attended a gift day service to offer their contributions towards making the final payment on the church as part of the 10th anniversary celebrations. The Reverend Ronald Hargreaves, the present vicar of St Barnabas, invited the Reverend John Surtin to preach at the service. The children have their own meetings in the church hall and choir vestry. Gifts are offered by adults and children. So ends a great chapter in the life of the church, and as the people leave for their homes, spiritually refreshed and renewed, they will take with them the words of their patron saint, Barnabas, when he said, "The Lord has commanded us to be a light, to bring salvation to the uttermost parts of the earth."